Now, let's get on to that first topic. What should Britain do now the US has bombed Iran? 0207862. 2222, that's the number you need. Iran's threatened a decisive response in the wake of US attacks on 3 of its nuclear sites. But does that mean us? Keir Starmer's making it clear that we weren't involved in the strikes. And he supports negotiation and diplomacy as the way forward. But how likely is that to happen? Shadow Foreign Secretary Priti Patel has warned we could get caught up in the fight if we don't tread carefully, and said she'd support backing up US troops and military action with force of our own. What should we do? Is it inevitable we'll get caught up in this, whether we like it or not? Suzy, what do you reckon? I mean, what's the likelihood for a start of Iran coming to the negotiating table now that there have been military strikes on their installations?
You know, look, no one knows. It's not. We can't predict what's going to happen. And ultimately, we want Iran to come to the negotiating table, because no one wants war, no one wants bombs being dropped, you know. And I actually work with Iranian refugees who have families, you know, in these areas, and they're very, very scared. And I think all we can do is hope that possibly this action leads them to say, that forces them into that position, because, you know, they weren't coming to the table in the way that they needed to. And so
why would they do that now? Because, I mean, we heard talks that the Iranian regime was fairly shaky.
Yeah.
If it's done anything, surely these attacks have emboldened them and drawn people towards their cause to unite them under the Iranian flag. Isn't that what's going to happen? I
mean, look, that could be what happens. We don't know. I mean, look, my great hope, as I say, I've actually worked with Iranian refugees, and, you know, that regime is so evil. When Mahsa Amini was murdered 2 years ago, the number of people that were locked up and tortured and executed, another level of evil, in my opinion. And so, look, we can only but hope that this action may force them to the negotiating table, and we see, you know, something we've not seen for a long time in Iran.
OK, we were informed that these attacks were going to take place. We weren't, I don't think, requested. It wasn't requested that our bases were used or that we helped out in any other ways. If we were asked, do you think we should respond? Do you think we should back up Donald Trump?
I think it's very difficult. What has been our standpoint has been negotiations, getting Iran back to the negotiating table. I think it's very difficult, but I do think that relationship is important. Look, that's going to be a call that Starmer and Lammy are going to have to take. But at the moment, David Lammy and Keir Starmer are saying very clearly that it is absolutely vital that Iran do not have that nuclear threat that is so vital. And that's why, you know, this is obviously the reason why Trump has taken the action he's taken to alleviate that threat.
It feels like, Albie, clear blue water has been placed there between supporting the idea of these strikes and actually taking part in them. And it's been made very clear. The UN ambassador, UK ambassador to the UN, said again, we did not participate. Do you think the Iranian regime will care about that distinction?
I don't think they will particularly care about that distinction, because I don't think they particularly care about what the UK has to contribute to the situation, which is pretty much nothing. So we've got to eat a little bit of humble pie here. The only people that matter in this situation are the Iranian Supreme Leader, Donald Trump, and Benjamin Netanyahu, who is, of course, the Prime Minister of Israel. I just want to push back on something which Suzy said about Iran coming to the table in a way that we've never seen before. Let me just remind everyone, we had a nuclear deal with Iran in 2015 that was signed with Obama, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action. And essentially, the Iranians agreed to stop enriching uranium. They got rid of in fact, all of their medium enriched uranium, 98% of their very enriched uranium, and 2/3 of their gas centrifuges they got rid of. This was under the JCPOA of 2015. Now, Donald Trump, because he just didn't like anything that Obama did, and Benjamin Netanyahu also didn't support the JCPOA, pulled out of that in 2018. So Donald Trump is now essentially has decided to solve a problem that he actually created. Had he not pulled out of the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action in 2018, Iran would not have the level of uranium that it has today. So I'm disappointed that it's got to this point, but I'm glad that the UK is staying out of it, and I think we should remain out of it.
What does it do for our relationship with the States? And you can see how carefully Keir Starmer has been treading to try and, trade has been a big part of this as well, to try and get a trade deal with the US. That relationship feels like it's made progress. If we are asked, do you think there's potential for damage? Because you're saying, Trump is effectively the author of this situation. If we're asked, should we respond? Should we go forward with military force to back up what Donald Trump's trying to do?
My instinct is to say no. I remember one of the first political issues I felt very strongly about, I was a child under 10 at the time, was the Iraq War. I just thought to myself, this seems wrong. And I think if a child can think that, and I have that same feeling now, I don't see why it is so beyond our politicians to realise that Western intervention in the Middle East over the last 20, 30 years has not led to any good outcomes. So what I would like to see is a return to what we had in 2015. That's going to be very hard because the West burnt a lot of bridges with Iran after Trump pulled out of the JCPOA. But I just wish we would stop thinking that we can go into other parts of the world and craft those parts of the world in our image. People are talking about regime change, like all of a sudden they're going to depose the Iranian leader and they're going to be replaced by some liberal democratic leader that's going to give free and fair elections and operate like the United Kingdom and the West. In what Arab country or country in the Middle East where there has been regime change, whether or not it's the Arab Spring, whether or not it's Afghanistan, whether or not it's Iraq, in what Arab state has that ever happened in? So why do we think it's going to happen in Iran? I don't think it will.
Let's take some calls. John's in North Yorkshire. John, what should we do? What's the way forward here? And how much support should we give to Donald Trump if he asks for it?
Hello, Matt. Hello, panel. I'm always the opposite to what our government wants to do. I'm very anti-authoritarian. I think Starmer is wrong to support Trump. Trump has gone alone without any authorization from UN or NATO or any other authority. He's attacked Iran. That is a violation of war. So now, technically, in my opinion, USA is now at war with Iran. And this is going to have further complications. I think he's trying to suck up to Trump regarding the tariffs. We've got things like Scunthorpe with steel at 25%. I'm not going off the subject, but he's trying to suck up to Trump. The reason why I mentioned Scunthorpe is British steel cannot compete on 25% tariffs.
Okay.
So this is Starmer's objective, is to suck up to Trump. I think we're completely wrong. USA and the UK is supporting Israel, and this is what the contention is really the root of the problem.
What do you think, John, of a country that's exported... John, what do you think of the idea of a country that's exported terrorism around the world having a nuclear option? Is that, because that's where we were headed, wasn't it?
Well, as far as I'm aware, we've got 10 nations. Who are we to say who is right? What about North Korea? North Korea is also considered as a rogue nation, as well as Iran. But I think it's certainly the wrong way to go about. Iran can now say, well, you started it, which is clearly correct.
Where do you draw the line then? Even the tacit agreement that the strikes were warranted, or allowing them to use our air bases, where would you draw that line?
It's USA, as far as I can see, has violated. That's the start of a war. If one nation attacks another nation, that is war. The good side of it is, as far as I'm aware, there's been no civilians has been killed as a result of it. It's been an amazing way how they've actually done it, and I think in the long term it would be absolutely fantastic if we could just eradicate all 10 nations to have nuclear. If we could do that in that process, we shouldn't have nuclear. I don't agree with any state having nuclear, not just Iran.
John, thanks for your call. Let's take another one. Andy's in Dorset. John there, and he's saying that without a UN resolution, we shouldn't be involved at all, effectively. What do you think of that?
Yeah, hi, how are you doing? Thanks for having me. We've actually met, by the way. We met in Afghanistan. We went on a patrol together.
Wow. Okay,
Yeah,
2008.
a little bit bizarre that.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Well, thanks for calling in, Andy. Nice to hear your voice again.
No worries. No worries. I think, if I'm being brutally honest, as someone who's fought in Afghanistan and Iraq, I think we've gone past the point of no return, which is really scary. In an ideal world, no one wants conflict, okay? And I think we as a nation right now should be doing everything we can to step back 100%. And and when I say that, that means not supporting Israel, not supporting America, even if that means saying they can't use our air bases, even if that means saying that we're going to stop using or supplying weapons, No one wants conflict. So I do fear that we've gone past that point of no return. Okay, but if we're able to pull it back from the brink, then we need to do everything we can to do that.
So why?
I personally,
Andy, why are we adopting this effectively sit on the fence attitude here, where we are saying we believe in the idea, we understand the idea behind these attacks, but we had no part in them, and we will not participate for the moment?
Because I think there's a bigger picture at play. I think we're already effectively involved in some kind of conflict. Okay, it's almost like another version of the Cold War. All right, and I think that's what's happening. We're in a proxy war at the moment. I think there are some people waiting to see which way the sort of land falls, as it were, or which way the conflict's going to go. And I don't even think we are sitting on the fence, because we are supplying weapons to Israel. We are at the moment doing everything we can to smooth things out with Trump's government, in regard to tariff deals and everything like that. We've recently seen US aircraft land in the UK at one of the bases that they have here. Okay, and I think, so we're not really sitting on the fence.
So,
but I think
Andy,
we need to take a more hardline approach to this and say, look, we're not getting involved in this. Everyone needs to be at the negotiating table. Iran, like your previous caller said, aren't the only rogue state out there. You've got North Korea as well, and arguably, and I know it won't be a popular opinion, but Israel are now a rogue state because they're doing their own thing.
And Andy, as somebody who was
sit down and talk,
as somebody who was involved in a conflict in the Middle East, would you agree with Albie that there can be no good outcome, no definitive outcome to this, where we install a democratic regime?
Look, I think to an extent I do. Look, I'm really injured from my time in the Middle East. Okay, I'm very much lucky to be alive, as are many of my colleagues. All right, and we learned firsthand that Iraq was started off the back of a lie. Afghanistan, that was possibly, there was a lot of falsehoods there, and no good came of either of them conflicts. Okay, I watched the news yesterday, and you had all these different Arab states saying that, as long as Israel agreed to give Palestine, for instance, their own land, then they would guarantee their safety. There's lots of people wanting to go to the negotiating table at the moment to pull everyone back from the brink. And the main people stopping that are Israel and America and anyone, and unfortunately, it's sad to say the UK is included in this, anyone who is looking to support them, supply weapons, provide bases, whatever it is. We just need to stand up and say, look, enough's enough.
We're gonna have to pause there, Andy. Thank you so much for those thoughts, and we appreciate your service and your experience as well. I just wonder how Donald Trump, this is what I don't understand. Donald Trump has gone from being someone who was America first, let's concentrate on domestic priorities, and suddenly is now launching what looks like what could be the beginnings of, a conflict in the Middle East.
Well, you can make an America first argument for this conflict, and that argument would be that Iran is on one side of the Strait of Hormuz, and a very large proportion of all the world's oil and all the world's gas goes through that point. And if that point is blocked by Iran, that sends gas prices up, that sends oil prices up, which increases inflation for everyone, and then actually could cause an economic crisis. So you can be America first, but ultimately we operate in a world of free and global trade, which means there are certain pinch points, and the Strait of Hormuz is one of them, that America is interested in.
It's really interesting how, at the end of the day, we are all connected, aren't we?
Ever globalised world, and that's what it is. There's all those knock-ons, and obviously always the concern with Donald Trump is how unpredictable he is.
Yeah, okay.